Welcome to the Driven to Engage podcast. With me today is Joe Ingram, the BDC genius, and now the sales genius. And Joe, I'm happy to have you on the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. I've been loving your Driven to Engage podcast and being out there. I'm watching all the episodes going, yes, he gets it. Yes, he gets it. Yes, he gets it. Where, I listened to quite a few podcasts and I'm like, that doesn't work anymore. You can tell you've been out of a dealership for a long time. Yes.
Yeah. That's great, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to drop a little knowledge here. You and I haven't discussed this previously, but when I left my gig at Shift Digital back in January 2020,
okay.
Fast forward a couple of weeks, we were both at NADA in Las Vegas, and I ran into you in the booth at, I can't even remember who. I think it was not Go to Connect,
Okay.
and we were there talking to Nate Sheshel.
Yes.
And I introduced myself. I don't think we'd met at that point.
No.
And I said, well, we're competitors, this and that. And you were so gracious, and I've remembered this ever since, that you were like, hey man, there's a ton of these dealers out here. Welcome, the water's warm. Basically, that was your message to me. And
I tell that to people all the time, but it is a mindset that I have, right? And I'm glad it resonated with someone, because my answer is always the same. Like, I literally gave every piece of training material I have to another trainer on the East Coast, because really? he was not doing great. And then he was like, well, I said, do you have clients? And he goes, I do. I go, take this material and go use it, right? Go use this and come through. And he came back, this is amazing. And I was like, great. And he's like, but let me buy it. I said, look, I sell my scripting and my word tracks on my website, right? I said, I sell it because I know no one can deliver it the way I do. And I said, but there's 15,000 is a minimum, right? 18 is the number we usually use, 18,000 new car franchises across the United States. I'm not getting to them all. You're not, Chris, you're not going to, Chris, you and I can stay in SoCal and never hit each other at a store.
Yeah.
Right. And so my answer is the pond is there, right? I do more than automotive. So I'm playing in other people's waters too.
Yeah. Right on. Good. Well, and I think you're right. It's funny you say that, right? Because I remember we had LA Car Guy as a client with one of the companies I worked with, and Mike Sullivan made the comment, because he did an endorsement video, and he's like, I'm happy to talk about it, and I'll tell people exactly what we do, because I know most people don't have the appetite to go to the depths that we go, right? And so in a lot of ways, you're spot on, and I think we've had this conversation that we genuinely want to change the perception of the car business, and there isn't any way that's going to be done with one person. And so that's why I started the Driven to Engage podcast. One of my clients was telling me about this other guy who was doing something similar, Chris Collins. I don't know if you're familiar with his content, Service Drive Revolution. But it's like, it takes a village in that regard. And really what I want to do with Driven to Engage is bring out these conversations, because I think we got to change that mindset in those areas where we got to change how we go to market. And now is probably the most critical time, right? Like, I'm actually curious to see what you're seeing out there in the market as it's transitioning right now, because we're coming out of COVID. Like, one of my stores today said in the 3 years that he's been there, this is the most inventory they've had, you know? So now, I've got a car and I've got a markup. Do you want it or not is no longer good enough. What are you seeing out there?
So I see the same thing. And I cautioned all my clients, the dealers that are with me. I said, please understand something, right? I said, we created the pre-COVID situation, right? By overbuying inventory, bringing it in, let's play the factory money game, as opposed to, making the money. And I said, so don't just arbitrarily buy everything that comes up, because now we're sitting. So you see dealers now that are literally sitting at pre-COVID numbers of inventory again. And the answer is, we're all going to panic and go, okay, let's start doing ad cars. Let's start doing the one at this price. Let's start doing the same games. We can go below invoice and stuff. And I'm like, I'm like, this doesn't make sense. We don't go do this anyplace else. Not one of us walks into a fast food restaurant. We don't go to McDonald's and go, I'll take a number one, but I'll give you $2 for it. Right? We just say, oh, that's the retail price. That's what we have. And COVID taught our customers that MSRP means something again. And it wasn't them that said MSRP doesn't mean anything prior to COVID. It was our sales staff and our management ideology and the turn and burn and go for it, right? I've always sat with owners and I go, okay, I need to know what you want. Do you want ego or do you want sanity? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, units is ego, right? And I said, profitability is sanity. You sleep better knowing that you've got profitability in your vehicles and you're selling them and the customer's happy. When you go for units, you're going for ego, going, oh, I'm number one, right? I've done it many times where it's like the owner's like, I want number one. I'm like, turn and burn, let's go. Okay. And we chase the units. But right now we're at that pivotal point where it's like, don't overstock on the inventory. If you overstock on inventory, then you get to that same point of going, oh, my flooring's out of control. I got to start giving away every possible car to get and start getting some cash flow back into the business. And we just came off of a time where we had extensive cash flow that came in.
Yeah.
So that's what I always tell them. But yes, my clients are all starting to get way more inventory in and go through. And I'm like, stop saying yes to the factory.
Well, this is where I really feel like how we're communicating is key. Like you said something there, the ego and sanity thing. The reality is you can do both.
If you
but
yeah.
But what it requires is salesmanship that connects with customers. What I'm realizing, like in the last week, I've listened to over 100 inbound sales calls. And if there's a theme, there's two parts to a car deal. The mechanics of it. What's the car? What's the deal? That's the mechanical side. The dynamic side of it is, what are the plans for your car you're driving now? What brought you into the market? How did we come to meet that you would give me your name, phone number, email address, the car you want, your trade, your home address? Like I got all this information. You don't do that when you walk in my store, but somehow now you've decided to give me, in spite of my stereotype, all of this information. How are we here? Like that's the dynamic part of it. When we get to know that piece, we can get both. But right now, man, what really concerns me, and I think you really touched on something I hadn't thought of myself, is that we're in this critical point where the market's changing and MSRP means something again. Are we just going to give it back because we allow our salespeople to go stay in the mechanical piece because they've gotten really good at, oh, they want this car and they want it at this price, take it or leave it.
Right.
Man,
right. I'm the only one that has it. So of course you'll pay the premium on it. Right.
Yeah.
But when you look, like I have my dealers, I have several of my dealers that keep 1,000 cars in stock. Right. And then when we looked over and I'm like, well, this one dealer who always has, thousands of cars, over 3 rooftops has 600 cars. Right. And it's like, okay, we can't sell 500 a month like we normally do if there's 600 across all 3 rooftops. Right. And you got the big stores doing 400, the other one's doing 350, the other one's doing 200. You're like, that doesn't add up to our inventory.
Right.
Right. And so then it was like, okay, everybody got to that. Look, if I have it, it's here. Customer goes, I'm thinking black. And you're like, hey, how about orange with tan interior? That's the only thing I got. And it's got a markup. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but I've been working with my clients to actively go out to other dealerships to buy their inventory. Okay.
Yeah, I saw something on your content on that.
Yeah. So that we're actively searching for other places' inventory.
Yeah.
Because again, if you look, okay, in the SoCal market, if you look on the edges of the country, right, that's where the sexier the car, the better. Okay. Right. So we're not necessarily in middle America is everybody going, ooh, I need the most high performance. I need the one with the lift kit. They're not looking for that. They're looking for functionality of the vehicle, right? Which goes back to my mechanical selling. Okay.
Right.
And then we come back, but now we go, oh, well, let's call over here, right? Like I had a friend of mine when I was running a Chrysler Jeep store, that he said, hey, I want one of the Hellcat Challengers and this and that, but you need to sell it to me for MSRP. And I'm like, bro, I got my first one the other day and a customer gave me 60,000 over MSRP. Right. And I'm like, and I'm going to give you, I mean, for one, you should be my friend too. Right. It's not just Joe's my friend, give me a hookup. I'm like, you're over here going, yeah, lose 60 grand for me. Right. And I was like, hey, let's just go look for one.
Yeah.
Okay. So we found a place that would sell it below MSRP when it came out because the factory was sending them to everybody. Guess what? Anchorage didn't need a Hellcat
right
Challenger, right? They were like, what do I do with this? And I'm like, I call them, I'm like, hey, I got somebody who will pay you, $1,000 over invoice. And they're like, done. And I'm like, perfect. And they'll arrange transportation and they'll do that. And then I called them, I said, do your wire transfer, get it done. But don't hurt mine because it's here, right? But again, that happens all over the United States. And I've gone into my clients before where they've sat down and said, you know what? I really need this high performance vehicle. I know you're here to train the team, train the managers, go through all this stuff. They're like, but you say you're really good on the phone. And I'm like, well, actually, I look just like Brad Pitt over the phone, so it'll work. And he's like, here's a stack of invoices across the US that have California emissions on these vehicles that go. And he's like, go buy me every one you can. So I spent my day, right, my 6 hours in the store on the phone, calling fleet managers, calling other dealerships, buying their car. And he's like, you can go $5,000 over MSRP to get these. I'll arrange the shipping. Just please go get it. And I'm like, I never even hit MSRP because the person who's willing to sell it can't sell it.
Right.
They don't have the demographic or the market to sell that vehicle. So I was over there going bing, bing, bing. And he's like, you paid how much? And I'm like, invoice. Right. We let him. He's like, no way. But again, it's mindset.
You had the appetite to go do it. It was there for him just as well as it was for you. But
right. Well, he said, I'm not going to trust any of my guys to go buy it. Right. He's like, I'm already paying Joe to be here.
Well, let's be honest. The salespeople are probably curbing the car on the other side and catch it something if they're smart about it.
Right.
Well,
not that we encourage that in any way.
No, not at all. Not at all. Joe, let's go back a second, man, because sure. I want people to get to know a little bit about your story. Like, how did you end up in the car business?
Like everyone else in the car business, not planned.
So you didn't grow up wanting to be in...
I grew up at a gas station. My parents owned gas stations growing up. So since I was 7 until I graduated college, I was working at the gas station, pumping gas, doing stuff. I was a grease monkey. I've always been a lover of cars. Between 16 and 17, my parents gave me my first car at 16. And between 16 and 17, I went through 11 cars.
Wow.
Okay? And it was just buy it, fix it, paint it, sell it, get the money to go buy something else until I got to the end, which was the car I wanted.
Wow.
And so,
which was?
Camaro Z28 T-top V8 manual transmission.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah. So
what year?
It was 82, and I upgraded nose, tail, and side skirts to be an 87. So
you're taking me back right now.
Yes, exactly.
We actually have a tie in there. I grew up, my mom worked 3 jobs in Northwest Washington on the Olympic Peninsula. And these folks owed her some money that she was doing accounting work for them. And they had this country store. And she says, you know what, just give me the store for what you owe me. And so that became our job as a family, me and my 2 sisters and my mom. I worked in the country store pumping gas. I made money. She didn't pay me. No, the only way I got money was the quarter tips that I earned by washing windows and pumping gas, So
I remember when my parents, I used to work 40 hours and I got $20 for the 40 hours I worked. And I remember I was so young, not understanding the fractions or the money. And I was like, I think I'm negative. If I made $1, it would have been 40. I don't even understand what's going on. But again, shut up and go to work. That's what we did, right? It gave us a work ethic that a lot of people don't ever get.
Dude, I think in a lot of ways, I'm who I am because of what I learned when I was 10. I mean,
True.
because that quarter meant something to me. I remember saving up for a BMX bike that cost $147. I remember to this day and
that's like a Bentley today. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was saving a quarter at a time, so,
I learned, again, one of my biggest life lessons came from the gas station out there pumping gas in the mornings and before school and after school.
Yeah.
But before school, what I learned from my dad was that, so in our town or our city, the freeway ran parallel to the main drag.
Okay.
And our gas station was on the main drag.
Yeah.
So people would get off like half a mile before the gas station, get off of the freeway, come down, run parallel to come pull into the gas station in the morning, not to get gas. They would pull in, honk over at the front side. My dad would come out and they would go, "Hey, I'm running late. I got a meeting today and I need the joke of the day." What's the joke of the day?
Oh, I love it.
So my dad would come out, tell them the joke of the day. They'd laugh. They'd go drive another quarter mile out of their way to get back on the freeway and go. But I always noticed all of those cars had their vehicle in our maintenance shop behind the gas station. They always came in to get gas. And I learned, if you're making people laugh, right, they value that, because a lot of people are miserable all the time. And so all of my trainings, all of my trainers are all taught comedic, right? And then a buddy of mine, Glenn Morshower, who's been in Hollywood for 40 years, he came out one day on a show we were doing and he said, "Joe is the personification of edutainment." Right? And I was like, "Thanks, Glenn. I don't know what that means." I'm like, "I need to go look up. What does that mean?" He's like, "You educate and entertain at the same time." Yeah. And I found that as soon as you get someone to laugh, it checks their ego. So whether it's the sales manager, the owner, or the salespeople themselves, as soon as they laugh with you, then their ego drops and you can actually impart wisdom.
Yeah. You know what, man, that is so true, because a lot of times when we come in from the outside, like I call it the sniff test. You got to pass the sniff test, because nobody's going to respect you if they don't. And if you don't pass the sniff test and they still let you in, it's probably because the factory or somebody else is forcing it,
Yeah, they're like, it's co-opt. Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think the more you get them to drop their ego, the more they retain. So that's a great point. And I think, I think too often it's too easy just to resort back to mechanics. I'm probably as at fault as anybody about that, because it's the easiest place to go to, For someone like you with your sense of humor, it probably is easier to go into the sense of humor place. And that's a gift.
And understand, both you and I share the love of statistics, right? So I'm an electrical engineer by my degree.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but because of my personality, right, the electrical engineering was just something my mom said when I was out of high school. I said, "I think I want to go fly helicopters." And she's like, "That's dangerous." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm like, kind of like that. And she says, go put everything back together that you took apart. All of the videotape players, all of the alarm clocks, all the stuff. And I was like, okay. She didn't know electrical engineering had nothing to do with that, right? Neither did I. But the answer was, great, I'm going to go to school and I'll go get that done. So that sent me down that career path. But about a year and a half into it, after everybody going, "Will you be quiet? We're an engineering department. Why are you so loud?" Right? I was like, "Well, I finished my work. It's pretty easy." And they're like, "Well, not everybody's done." I'm like, "I'll help them." They're like, "No." So then the answer was, go be management if you want to talk to people all the time. So I got moved into management very early on, and then ended up running 2 manufacturing divisions, running a crew of people, like 50 people that were working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Wow.
And so in my 20s. So it was like, okay, that's where it went to. Got tired after 10 years of every time the government has a hiccup or a change, because it was aerospace manufacturing, right? I ended up with lay everybody off, hopefully hire you back in 45 days when somebody else is in office or somebody else frees up a budget that got put on hold and stuff.
Right.
So we were working on satellites and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But
Wow. So what was the transition to the car business from what would appear to be a pretty decent gig, I would imagine?
it was a pretty decent gig. I'm not going to lie, but what I found is and now they weren't even a union shop. It was TRW at the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Long Beach?
they did credit reports. It was out in Hawthorne,
Oh, right.
Manhattan Beach,
Yeah.
by your studio.
Yeah.
So they said, so as I was there, it was let them go, try to hire them back, come back and forth. And then I got tired of, I have to lay people off, pull them back. And then because of that, it was really difficult to keep a team motivated and going. So I said, I'm going to go figure out something else to do. On my way to the car business, I stopped for 2 years at a criminal defense law firm because, that makes about as much sense as everything else, right? Answered an ad, went in there, met with them. I went through 7 interviews that each had 2 people in them to go into it. Final one was the owner and his wife. Sat down with them and the owner says, listen, we're a criminal defense law firm. He said, the better we do, the more upset the public is with us. And I looked him dead in the eye, and this is probably what set me on the road to the car business. Just kidding, right? I told them, I'm morally and ethically challenged. Show me the money. Okay. Now, mind you, this is way before Jerry Maguire came out. So I'm originally the guy who said it. So, but when you look at it, he goes, all right, let's go. And so I beat out like the 20 plus interviews that they had, came in, and I built his inside call center. So he had an outside sales team. The inside call center was to schedule appointments for them. So, oh my gosh, that sounds like a BDC, right? So I was doing that before I even knew what a BDC was, built it all up. Then we realized there were people we couldn't get to, and the guys that are driving there can't do the phone pops that they have to close over the phone. So I trained a team inside and built this phone center that 3 of my guys were all qualified enough to sell criminal defense over the phone.
Wow.
And so we took them, when I got there, they were doing $300,000 a month, right? Within the first 6 months, we were at $1 million a month. Okay. They went from 2 states to 9 states, and we just blew it up, and it was there, and it lasted until one night while sitting there, because it was in Santa Monica. Was in Chino Hills, so it was like an hour and a half drive each way. So I would always hang out until traffic died.
Right.
So it's 10 o'clock at night on a Friday, and I take a phone call from someone who is trying to find their attorney. While I put them on hold, I go in and grab the case file to go see what does this guy doing and making sure I'm notifying the right attorney. I read it, and I was like, oh, I just sat there with tears running down my cheek. And I was like, man, we're defending really bad people. And I had separated myself from that for almost 2 years. And then I called the owner. It was 11 o'clock at this point. I called him, and he's like, what's going on? I said, I just want to let you know that I can't work here anymore. And so he puts me on speaker with his wife next to him, and he goes, you're leaving? And she goes, Joe, thank you for everything you did for us. Thank you so much for what you did. And I'm like, oh, absolutely. And then he says, but I'll tell you right now, you lasted a lot longer than we thought you would.
Wow.
And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, we knew you were moral and ethical when you came on board. He goes, but we just knew it was going to happen. You were going to stop and go, hey, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. But that was the guy that showed me commission. That was the guy that says you get paid off of it. And working engineering, right? I had people that had been there 2 years longer than I had been alive that I was managing. And because they had been there so long, they were making more money than me. Right. And I have all the responsibility and all this pressure, and they're doing a regular line job. Right. But because they'd been there forever, they get to make more money. And I was like, so when I got to this commission thing after the first month, I was like, woo, this is great. I get paid for my effort. Yes, this is great. Dude. And so at that point, when I walked away at 11 o'clock that night, I went online at the time, some kind of version of AOL, and then looked it up, and I found a job that was hiring for call center managers, went to go interview, and it turned out to be 4 BDCs for AutoNation.
No kidding. What year would this have been?
2000.
2000, huh? Wow.
So in 2000, I went and interviewed a couple times with these people. Then they gave me 2 dealerships. It was a pilot program for business development centers that AutoNation was running.
Yeah.
So I went in, did that. They put out 10 at the end of the 6 months. There was 3 left, and I had 2 of them. So that gave me the nickname, the BDC Genius, because I was still standing after all that. And then I turned that BDC gig into transition to trainer of salespeople while running the BDC.
Yeah.
At Toyota Cerritos. So I was at Toyota Cerritos, Lexus Cerritos. And then after talking with the GMs and the GM at Lexus, I said, look, man, it's too big. I've got 17 people in the Toyota BDC, right? I've got 6 people over here at Lexus. Plus I'm doing all the advertising. Plus I'm doing used car management with the guy. We run the ads for used cars. We do the service loaners. We have and he was like, he goes, well, I think what we're paying you here is a full-time wage. So I said, no, I'm getting paid here and there. And he was like, no, I went back over to the Toyota guy and I said, hey, it's getting too big. He goes, look, I know what you do for the guy next door. Come do half of that for me and I'll match what you're making at both stores. And I said, okay, great. So then all he did was add training onto me when I got there, when I came over full time. And within 60 days, I was the general sales manager.
Wow.
So it took him from 650 units a month that we were doing to 950 units a month. And then 1 month hit that 1,000. So we can say 1,000. Right. And then I went back to, let's keep the gross at 950. We made more money than we did on the 1,000. So
yeah, that's interesting, man. Cause I mean, I talk about units and gross and you can do both, but I'll be honest with you, I've never worked at a store at that scale. Like
yeah.
I've usually been in that kind of mid-range store, 350, 400.
Right.
Or below. And so, at Subaru Pacific was my last retail gig. We took that store from 60 to 220, 250
right.
Within a couple of years. And we saw that kind of, we were consistent. LA car guys real good about, they look at their numbers. And so, Pacific Porsche was doing their numbers, but we were consistently highest close rate and highest gross per copy. But it was really about like, even the strategy we took was we were a true car dealer. And at that time, true car, you could see everybody's pricing.
Right.
So I just took everybody else's prices, added $100 to it. And then our team just outworked the competition. And so I don't know about you, Joe, but I've never had a customer say, wow, you know what, Chris, hold the car. I'll be right down. That's a great price. Usually when that happens, I made a mistake in the desking, right? So
I'll tell you, that's also when I tell people is the one who goes, hey, I'm on my way right now to come buy the car. I'm like, yeah, they have challenge credit and they can't buy the car once they get there. You got to chase for cosigners for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. That scale of unit scale that's another world for me. You touched on something that I'm curious about because I've spent some time when I was at Shift Digital, I had AutoNation stores that I went into. And so I spent time in Compass and I noticed something in Compass that it reiterated something that I knew, which was a benchmark for contact ratio. Do you remember what the number is for contact ratio?
I don't remember back then when I was there.
Yeah.
I had like Dealer Socket people before Dealer Socket was Dealer Socket sat with me to say, oh, hey, let's go through this. So Brad was there looking at stuff, Jonathan Ord. They came in and sat with me to see the system we had and said, how can we build it better? And then at that point, AutoNation came in, sat down and said, we're going to build our own CRM. How should we build it? How should we do all this stuff? And then I showed them all the stuff we had with our current system and what we would want with another system. And they started putting it together.
Okay. So it's funny. They had a benchmark of 77% contact ratio in Compass. And one of the things that we found was that our high performing dealers at the time I was working for a consultant, we had maybe 60, 70 all over the country, high end, Kia to Mercs and everything in between. It didn't matter what you were selling or where you were selling it. Like the high performing dealers that were on top of their daily activity could get in that 70-75% 70 to 80% contact ratio.
Right.
So I always thought, the benchmark became 75%, but it was interesting when I went into AutoNation, curious. I thought maybe you might have some of that insight, but you were even before.
I was before Compass came out. I never used Compass. So I was already gone. So I only stayed in AutoNation for 4 years. So
Gotcha.
I did BDC for a year and a half, trainer for a half, became GSM for a year, got them up to the next level that was there. Then because it was AutoNation, I went to service director.
Gotcha.
So they said 71% of all GMs in AutoNation stores come from the fixed ops side. So the GM I was with said, hey, you know what? The service director's leaving. We got an experienced service manager down there. I want you to go in there, learn from him, and go see what you can do. And I said, all right, well, I'm trying to get to GM. And he's laughing. He's like, it's 3 years. Stop it. Right. And I'm like, I want to go. He took 25 years to get to where he was. So I was like, I ain't got that kind of time. And so I went down. He set me up with the regional guy for AutoNation for all service, who happened to be down the street from where we were. And so he sent me there and goes, go interview with this guy. And then I came back and the GM's just laughing at me. And he's like, dude, I don't know what I'm going to do with you. And I'm like, what? And he goes, how did it go? I go, dude, I had no clue what he was talking about. Right. I said, I know how to turn a wrench. I know how to do this. But he was like, how do you prevent a warranty audit? How do you get your, effective labor rate to be blah, blah? And I'm like, these are all terms. I have no idea what you're talking about. Right. He goes, well, I just got off the phone with them and he says, you got approval. And I said, really? And he goes, because once he sat with you, you gave him answers. He's been doing this for 35 years. And he said he was believing your BS answer over what he knew. And he goes, and I went to go double check myself just to make sure I didn't, because I was believing this guy. And then he said, if this guy could teach the advisors to sell like that, then we're going to go crazy. So it took me 90 days to understand all of service. And then the next 9 months was record setting, right? 4,000 repair orders a month kind of deal, and making all the money and putting it there. So
it's interesting that listening to Chris Collins stuff really, I never worked on the fixed ops side of the house, except
I never want to again.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it magnifies the Karens of the world, right? But, or the interactions with them. But what I did, I had to walk through service to get to my office, and 9 times out of 10, I couldn't get to my office before I was hit with service heat,
Yeah.
And it just, I feel like there's that part where, and of course, fixed ops guys listen to this are like, oh, these sons of bitches. But, I just feel like that sales mentality is so effective, because it baffles me that somebody would have a $2,000 RO, and the thank you is that they leave the RO at the cashier, and your car's over there. It's like, that just blows me away that that was the level of customer service. And I think just simple things like that, like understand how much time it takes in somebody's day to come in and have to do this. It's like
no one's happy pulling into the service drive.
No,
you could include maintenance in their payment. You could give them free maintenance. Regardless, they don't want to. So I'm the service director of the store, right, at Toyota of Cerritos. I have 2 Lexus from the store when I was working there, but I have 2 of them. They're big Toyotas, right? So I pull into the service drive every morning and drop it off. We were on a postage stamp size dealership. So the porter would take my car and go find an open spot, because no matter what, my spot was filled with a service guest car, right? So he'd go find someplace that he could park it. And then they would come back and my staff would say, Joe, again, your car is like twice the mileage it's supposed to be for an oil change. And I go, yeah, I don't like getting my car serviced. They're like, you're the service director. You pull in the service drive every morning. All you have to do is tell the porter, give the key to the advisor to get the service done. And I'm like, yeah, I don't like getting services done. Right. There's never anybody happy to go there.
No. No,
And so you deal with that. And I've blessed their heart. I mean, once I got out of it, I was like, I'll build service BDCs for you. I'll train people on how to handle the phones better, emails, texting stuff. Yes, I'll do that. Don't ever put me as a service director, because bless their heart, they get beat up every day.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's where that mentality comes, where it's kind of like, even when I give customer service, they don't appreciate it,
Yeah.
So that's where I feel like service leadership really is around really getting your arms around your people,
Yeah.
and giving them the accolades that they need to keep delivering to the customer, so well, so
Sorry, that was a long old tangent, but that's how I got in the car business. And then,
take me to the next step then. Like, you
So-
had this path to get to GM. I had a 3-year plan too when I went to Subaru Pacific. Tell me what happened from there.
So at that point in time, the partner manager in service, he got a gig someplace else. And when it came time for, after the 10 months in that we were just killing it, right? The GM's gone and they got to hire a new GM. So I'm like, hey, fixed stops, GSM, same store, been here going on 4 years now. Woo! Yes. And then no, they gave it to the finance director. He's a great guy, love him to this day. But the answer was, I was like, what? And then corporate came in and said, you know what? This guy's the finance director. He knows nothing about service. Joe's in service less than a year, right? And the guy who's been a 30-year service veteran's bouncing to another store. You know what we need to do? We need to go hire a service director and put him above Joe. And so they went and found a 25-year Ford guy.
Oh boy.
Right? Dropped him in on top of me and said, teach him Toyota and teach him AutoNation. And so this guy was 25 years at the same location. He had his routine. I go talk to the techs all day, and then I come back in, yell at advisors, and move on. I don't handle heat. I don't work weekends. I don't handle, and we were like, whoa, we were on a 3-shift rotation on the weekends, so that my drive supervisor, my shop foreman, and my partner and I, we would all rotate through who had to work a Saturday. And so it was like, okay, this is bad. And it was just so much heat jumped on me. And then I got the phone call that says, hey, do you want to build a BDC out at this other dealership? And I said, yeah, here's what I want to make. And they were like, owner says fine. So I followed this guy who was my GSM prior, the one I took his job at Toyota Cerritos. He went out there to be a GM. I go out there. I'm sitting there with them. I'm there 45 days building up the BDC. I'm their BDC director at this point. So I took the step back, but I'm getting paid, so I didn't care. So I'm sitting there going back and forth. It's a Saturday. We've got appointments. We got this, the GSM sitting there and the owner's sitting at the sales desk. And I'm talking to both of them. The GM walks in. He goes, yeah, I just came to get something out of my office, blah, 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 blah. And he walks upstairs to go to his office. I look at the owner. This little sparkle goes in his eye. And then he gets up and goes, I'll be right back. And he goes and walks out of the office and goes upstairs. So I looked at the GSM. I said, hey, just gonna let you know right now, the guy upstairs, that he's going to go upstairs and fire right now. And he's like, what? I go, he's going to go fire the GM right now. Just letting you know that. He's going to go fire. He brought me. So I don't know if I have a job. And I said, but I'm here on a day off. I'm going to tell you, I'm leaving. Call me if I should come in on Monday. Right. And he's like, are you kidding? No, that's not even possible. I said, trust me, I know people. So I get in my car, I drive down the road, and I'm probably about 20 minutes away. The GSM calls me and I'm like, yeah, what's up? He goes, hey, don't be surprised or anything, but the owner terminated the GM like this. And I'm like, oh, really? Wow. Right. Just in case he's on speakerphone. And he's like, but the owner said he wants you to stay, wants you to know that your job is secure and blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, so come back on Monday. He goes, yeah, he just want to let you know that. And then another month goes by and I'm GM. So that poor guy was the GSM that the other GM gave me his job. Then he called me. I went with him there. 30 days later, he's gone. And I got that job as GM. So it took 4.5 years from getting in the car business to be a GM.
Wow.
Whatever. And that was one of those things where I realized the ladder was against the wrong wall, but I climbed it.
Yeah. Okay.
Got all the way up there and I was like, not making the money I want to make, a lot of stress, a lot of pain, a lot of frustration.
Mm.
And so I was like, man, this is painful. And then went to go work for Joe Verdi as the first car guy he ever hired.
No kid. Wait,
Yeah.
what?
They solicited me. One of the guys reached out and he said, Joe doesn't hire car people. So it's your electrical engineering degree and the criminal defense firm that looks so much better for us. So I went in, met with Joe, and worked for Joe for 2 years during the 2008 fiasco.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
So that was at a time I met Bill Phillips.
Okay.
You know Bill?
Yep.
Yeah. So I, as much as Bill and I play, it's funny, we get along personally, but I can't work for Bill. Right. And I, as much as we didn't get along, I'll always give him credit that the stuff that I learned working with him is why I'm where I'm at today. Cause it was the contrary approach. Nobody wants to work internet leads the way they need to get worked. And I think the difference where he and I separate, his whole thing, he had this phrase that doesn't matter what you say yabba dabba doo Fred Flintstone. It doesn't matter. Just say something and you'll sell cars. And I was like, well, you can do the quantity thing, but if you wrap it with some quality, you actually compound the two. Right. And so that's where I've found kind of my voice in this whole thing is that you can have really good process, be smart about it. Like I feel like a lot of these talking heads on how to be effective with internet is just complete BS. Whenever I hear somebody talk about 90-day buying cycles, I disconnect. Like I don't have time for you now. But
my little slogan for people is sales is only a numbers game until you become educated.
Yeah.
Because that's when you realize conversion is the name of the game. If I raise my skill set, I don't have to do as much work. Okay. A buddy of mine, Brad Lee, goes out there and goes, look, if you want to sell a certain amount, count how many hands you shake. And if you want to double it, you double the handshakes. And I'm like, no, that hits a wall. That's what causes burnout. That's what makes you hate your gig and go find something else and go, you know what? Forget this sales thing because I can't do 500 phone calls a day to hit my number, right? If you're going to dial 100 and 17 are going to answer, right? And you go, I set 2 appointments. My answer is, how do you get better on those 17 people to set 4, to set 5? Yeah.
There's a thing called diminishing returns.
Yep.
Right. And so it's finding that sweet spot of where can I be most effective? And I think that's, in addition to the fact that there's an approach to accountability that I think that term in automotive is completely lost on people.
Yeah.
Like there's a difference between holding people accountable and them feeling accountable for the work. Right. And that nuance is the difference between a really positive culture and a negative one. And I think in automotive, we struggle with that. And
well, nobody ever sells the sales to people on why you do what you do, right? One of the things that I do all the time, like I'll give you scripting, but I don't hand it to you and go, say it. And that's what, I mean, it's just a droning yell at people, repeat it. I'm like, let me give you the psychology of every step we go through. So if you can just remember the psychology and the reason why you're doing something, then maybe your words aren't perfect, but you're in the same direction. Okay.
Dude, that's a great, it's almost like a test could be a multiple choice. Which would be the best way to say this?
Yeah.
Right. And give them 3 different phrasings of the same thing.
Yeah.
Because it really is all in the nuance. And so much of it just drives me nuts when I see all these Facebook ads of people posting their text communications with the customer and they're negotiating.
You're in the same groups as me.
They're negotiating car deals in text.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, if we're going to have this level of conversation, there's so much lost in translation in that. And then people wanting to spike the football on how they, got over on the customer. It's like, wait a minute, you guys got to stop with this, man. This is taking us down the wrong path. We're just perpetuating the stereotype here, Well,
again, when you get to talking over the phone, it's 80% tone and inflection, 20% the words. right? If you use the same words you've been using face to face, then you're not using 20% words, you're using 7% words. So it's all, again, 80% is how you sound, and that's completely in control of you.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, but when we go to text messaging, it's 100% the words. Okay.
Yeah.
There is tone and inflection, but who gets to decide the tone and inflection? The person reading it, right? The person reading gets to decide. So I tell everybody, okay, look, have a fight with your significant other, leave the house, and they text you, have a great day. How did they say it? Right? Because it's literally just the same words that they could send at any other time, but you read it as have a great day, right? And you're like, ooh, the customer gets to assign the tone on the other side, which is what causes so much drama back and forth.
Yeah.
Because they get the tone and you're like, no, I said it nicely. They're like, I didn't read it nicely. Right.
That's right.
And what do most salespeople say? Well, that's your fault, not mine. I know how I said it. I'm like, no. That's not, no. Right.
Yeah.
I will write emails to people and go, please read this in the tone in which I intended it to go to. Right. Because I can't talk to you over the phone. I'm saying this in a way of understanding and counseling, not saying that it's trivializing what you asked.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you can't read that and then go, I'm going to try to be upset. No, I just gave you the framework to read the next paragraph, and then I can control that part of it as it goes through.
Yeah. And who's taking the time to do that? Right. I mean,
right. Most people aren't.
Yeah.
Most people aren't doing anything when it comes to reaching back out to people. Right. The statistic is first person to get to the lead. Right. Because in most situations, our leads are going to 5 different establishments.
Yeah.
Right. Within an area, regardless of the provider. So they're going to go to 5 different people. Unless it's your website that only goes to you, everybody else is going to farm it out to try to say, look how much value I bring as a lead provider. So there's 5 different people you're fighting. Okay. If you're the first person to reach that lead, you have a 260% better chance of having a customer than being the person that's the second or the third.
Well, and that's it's funny, man, that piece to response time, right? Like it's, once again, when we talk about compounding improvement, it's all well and good to respond quickly. It's all the all that
better be good at the same time.
Yeah. Because once again, it's in the perception. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Because I've really seen, like, it's funny. I went through this the other day myself because I was thinking about going to Digital Dealer. I went to the website, like, what's it going to cost me? Looking around the website, there's nothing there. I'm like, damn, okay. Get more information. Web form. It's like in the moment, I felt like, oh wait, Digital Dealer is meant to be the spot for us digitally.
Yeah. You are the name for digital. Yeah.
and we're hitting ourselves with form fills. Like if you're out there, that should be, and it really, the light bulb went off. Like, I'm done with web forms. Why are we doing that to our customers who, if people actually understood the bounce rate off of their web forms, would you persist with it? And I think that's where we can be so much better in that. And that's where I love what Carnell's doing with their chat and the whole purpose behind getting away from web form. You got a question, ask it. I'm happy to answer it, but you don't have to call me yet.
Right.
But let's have a conversation. Let's get to the answer to the question. What's your take on that?
Well, I will tell you, I've spoke at Google, that's down the street over here, a couple times with automotive dealerships for manufacturers.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, the biggest thing that is hilarious was watching owners come in. So while you're at Google, they go, hey, we're going to give away a free Google Home, okay, to the first dealer who can go to their website and schedule a service appointment. Go. You got these owners sitting there on their phone or on a tablet, or even the ones that have their laptop in front of them, and they're going through, you're at like 6-7 minutes of nothing but typing, going through this. And you finally get somebody who goes, done. And you look down, you're like, 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Do you believe your customer is going to spend 8 minutes trying to get on the easiest way, which is go select, click, 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 click. It's so painful. We don't create it, right? I always say that we've all heard a confused mind will never buy, right?
Yeah.
And I tell everybody, a confused mind will never click submit on your web form, right? Why are you making it so difficult to find the information and stuff? And again, we get stuck in the old school thinking.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why a Tesla is eating our lunch with what you do, right? Now, I'm in Orange County, so white Teslas live everywhere here, okay? Tesla has their delivery center down the street from my office, and I get to see all these people leaving with their whole family with their phone out there taking videos of them leaving the facility. But I also had somebody who used to work for me that goes in and goes, I just ordered my Tesla on the phone. Oh, it was so easy. I just went through ping, ping, ping. And I'm like, yeah, you want to know how you schedule service? You click the button and it says schedule your service, put your phone number in. It goes, hey, we found you. Boom. Go ahead, schedule it.
Yeah. And this is where I feel like in automotive, we've given the keys to all these companies to come up with, and we haven't been directive in what's best for us as operators.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like there's a business model for tech stack. Like, let me talk to you about all the menagerie of shit that you got working that's in some ways working against you.
Yeah.
Customer experience. Like, let's just get this organized. Might surprise you how much money you'd save every month and actually create a real logical go-to-market strategy with your tech. To make
I partnered with a guy who does service BDC.
Okay.
So it's I can't use the name because there's one behind me, but one of those robot ladies that you yell out their name, right? And so it's like that for service calls. And I have clients who go, you know what? I don't like those because I want them to talk to a real person. And I say, that's great, but you're at an 83% connect rate from phone calls coming in. So 17% of the people aren't ever talking to a receptionist or to the end result, which was a service advisor to set an appointment. So why did you just give away?
How many days did it take them to get to that 100?
Yeah.
2 days?
Yeah.
So 17 people every other day in a best case scenario, you're just not talking to.
You're not answering the phone.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'd rather have a person do it. I'm like, I'd rather have it be answered. Right? If it could pick up the phone and go, hi, Mr. Olson. Right? I don't care that it's a robot. It said, hi, Mr. Olson, are you looking to schedule service? And you go, yes. And it pulls your record and says, oh, are you bringing in your Lamborghini? See, gave you a Lamborghini. Right. Yeah. So are you bringing in your Lamborghini? Yeah. What service do you want? You're like, I just need the oil change. Well, it's like, okay. Are you going to drop it off? Are you going to bring it in? Here, let me tell you what the schedule's like. And then it gives you 3 different options. You pick one and it goes, okay, I'll text you your appointment information.
Yeah.
And the call is 2 minutes. But I want them to talk to a real person. Come on.
Yeah. That technology's out there. And it's funny. The phones. Like it is, I mean, on the one hand, I've made a lot of money helping people figure out how to answer web forms, but at the end of the day, that's not moving the needle like the phones does.
Right.
And whether it be the fixed op side of the house or variable.
Or the sales side. Yeah. You definitely have no choice but to make it easier for your prospect. And the old school thinking says, if I make it too easy, it costs me gross. And you're like, what costs you gross is lost opportunity. Yeah.
It's in this day and age, like going forward the next 5 years, it's just wrong-headed. Like,
right. If you look at Amazon, if you bought anything on Amazon, it's electronic. When you click on it, it pops up and says, would you like to buy the extended service contract?
Right.
They have a 55% take rate.
Wow.
Okay. And everybody goes, well, that's because it's cheaper. It's literally 20% of what the item is you bought.
It is a massive profit center.
Okay. It's like, okay, I bought something for $10 and they're telling me for $2.95, I can protect it. And I'm like, well, yeah, over half the people are like, protect it. And you're like, okay, if over half the people are doing it, then why are we not over half of our people buying a car getting an extended service agreement? Right. And so
it's, I think, and that's where, and I don't want to name names, but I think there's a lot of people out there training in that old school mentality. And I it sounds great to the people who scratch the checks because it's what they remember. But it's like, man, that stuff's not going to work for me.
I walked into a client who's, I was meeting with them, going over training potential, right? I sat down and I was like, okay, talk to him. And he goes, well, see on that cabinet over there? He said, yeah. He goes, those are my Joe Verdi tapes. And I'm like, do you still have a VCR to play this? He goes, yeah, I have it in the training room. So when anybody wants it, I go, can I go open the cabinet? He goes, no, it's locked. Here, let me give you the key. I'm like, so you have it under lock and key. So you're locking the training to prevent that kid who's like, I just want to learn something. I can run over and put it in there because why? You don't want somebody to steal it? I'm like, you bought it 20 years ago. So, but again, the mindset's different. I'm over here going, let me find the easiest way to train your people when they need help, not just beat them up all day to say that, right? I have salespeople that use my new tool to help them once they get a pencil, right? So the desk gives them a pencil and says, go tell the person this, this, and this. And if they don't really understand it, they don't look at the manager and go, do what? Tell me that again? Because the manager will go, are you stupid? What the heck? Blah, 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 blah. We've been over this 100 times, right? And it's like, okay, bless your heart. Most sales managers forget to train or forget what training was like when they were coming up to say, hey, I need to invest in the people. And so that's where you look and go, okay. So they walk around the corner, type in what it was said and said, how can I say this, right? Politely or nicely or however. And so now you get the salesperson practicing all the way to the desk with their pencil, right? Going, okay. And they sit down with the customer here, this is da-da-da-da-da, and they'll throw it out there. But
so talk to me about that. Cause I know now you've kind of transitioned, you've been doing BDCs and all this. And I've seen a ton of your content out there, but I love what the direction you're going with Ask Joe Now. Tell me about the impetus for that. Like, what was the inspiration?
So when AI hit, right, my very first thing months and months ago when it came out for us, right, ChatGPT, the sales trainer on the East Coast and I did a Zoom meeting. We both created accounts. We both sat down, and my first one was, how do I implement AI into the automotive industry? Okay. And this is before they had the updated version. It was only through 2021. Right. So it was like, you can do this, this, this. I'm like, I don't have that skill set. So I got to work on that. I got to go back through. And then I have embraced it at this point. And like you and I had spoken earlier, I believe the people that embrace it are the ones that will still have jobs in the future when AI starts replacing other people's jobs, right? Because right now there are jobs on Indeed for prompt engineers that are paying 150 grand and you can work from home. And what are you doing? Typing in questions. Okay. So it's just like Google when it started, where you'd go pizza, it would go, here's a place in New York, here's one in Chicago, here, and you were like, oh, whoa, no. I need a pizza place in my zip code. And then you had to put it in. You learned to actually do it right. Right. And so the quality of your answer is based on the quality of your question with your prospects as well as with AI. So you go in and you build out. So I was like, how can I get this done? So I went out, found a program that creates chatbots. Okay. And most of us go, oh, the chatbot I use on my dealership website. And I'm like, okay, kind of. What is your web? I encourage everybody, go type it in. Go there and play with your chatbot and see what kind of answer you get. It's not written for automotive. Right? It's generic. Try to refer back, and the answer all the time is, I'll have someone reach out to you. Give me your contact info. Okay.
Yeah.
Guys, if that's what you want to go spend what on average $35,000 for a new vehicle, do you want the answer being go home, just get off of my website and I'll have someone call you later.
Right.
Why are you on my website? If you wanted to call, you would have called, right? If it's in the middle of the night, I get it. but there needs to be a live interaction, right? The chats that I use, the companies I use have live people all night long that will go to your website and pull up the actual car. If they go, well, I need tan interior, they're going to go, does this one work for you? Because they found it. Right. My chatbot's not that way. Okay. So I've taken all of my years of training, all of the documents that I have made, all the processes, procedures, stuff like that. I took them all and I taught a little robot, right? Picture it really cute and tiny. Okay. But if you do, I taught it all of my material and I said, here. So my clients that I have now, I'm like, if you have a question, you don't have to call me while I'm at another client, right? Or you don't have to do this. But even my own trainers, when they're in store, will go, okay, hey, this one's a doozy. And I'm like, what is it? And they'll say, this is what happened, blah, 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 blah. And they'll go through this. My little chatbot doesn't know how to tell you who gets middled out of a deal. That's not what it's there for, right? You go, well, here's this one, here's this one. No, but what it does is you go in and you ask it a question. Okay. And I tell everybody, the trick to asking it a question is if you were to call me, you wouldn't call me and go, I had one person and a BDC type in, the Explorer is done. Okay. So I gave it a little bit of my personality, which has some edge and car guy in it. Right. So it was like, wow, that's great. What should I do with this information? Right. And the guy was like, what? Well, the Explorer that was in smog and safety is done. Great. What do you want me to do with this information? Yeah. Right. And I said, if you called me and said the Explorer's done, I would have no idea how to coach you. So I said, pretend you're calling me. What would you do? You'd go, Joe, I need an email to notify the customer who was waiting for the coming soon vehicle that just finished smog and safety and they can come buy it. Right. If you said that, right, what would I do? As a person, I would go, okay, let me generate an email and I'll send it to you and you can do it. Right. But since I put all my info into this bot, you go type that in and within 3-4 seconds, it goes and spits out your email template. So I've got BDC guys, experienced sales guys that come back and go, okay, hang on. And they go ask the question, or what they do, which is great. And this is what I love about car guys. We'll find the shortcut, right? They're like, oh, anytime the customer emails me, I just copy the email out of the CRM, pull up your bot, and I type in, write me a reply that tells them this. And then they go, and then I just paste the email in. And so that reads the email, writes them a professional response that comes back out. So they're now, instead of wasting their time going back and forth, they sound a lot better. They're going for the appointment as opposed to selling the car, right? And all of this is being done because all the information I have is in my head. Yeah. And my answer is, I need to sell this to every dealership across the United States. Yeah. Okay. And I tell everybody, I go, if I was sitting behind your salesperson when they took an internet lead, a phone pop, right, or went to go talk to a customer, if I sat with them, would you sell more? Right. I've taken several dealerships now to 1,000 cars a month. I kind of understand the game. Right. Okay. While I was GSM. So I trained the #1 stores in the nation. Okay. For particular brands. And I'm like, let's go. We got this. We can go do it. But I don't have to be there now every day. Right. And Chris, I think you'll like the best part. I'm going to sell the little sales bot, right? The equivalent of me sitting on their shoulder for like $99 a month.
Per user?
No. Per store. $99 a month. And then I'll tell you, if you pay for the year in advance, I'll give you 2 months free.
You're underselling.
I want the information out there.
You're underselling your sexy little AI bot.
I know. But this little dude will just work no matter what I do.
It's all, right? Dude, if I was to say anything on that, it's like, well, it's too cheap. Yeah. I don't see the value. Why is it so cheap?
Right. Well, my answer is I want it to the point where a salesperson, if he wanted to do it, could do it himself. Because the store wouldn't do it for them. Right. And so like my sales show that I do it. And for a salesperson, it's $50 a month and you get 4 live shows every month, right? That we go live on. But again, why do I do that? Well, if the dealership wants to pay for it, then they can go pay $300 for it a month, and they can watch it in their conference room and put it all up there every week on Wednesday at 2. But I want the salesperson to know that if your dealership doesn't want to pay for training, it's not because I didn't make it affordable for you.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I look at. And I'm like, I'm going to make it affordable and go across. If 18,000 dealerships want to pay me $100 a month so that they have no excuses for their salesperson who says English isn't really good for me, or what do you mean I left out 10 words in the sentence I wrote that was 15 words, right? And things like that. If you want it done properly, why not leverage technology? And that's what my goal is leverage technology, build it out the right way, right?
Yeah.
I want you to be first to respond to the lead, but I want an intelligent response, and I want you to be worthy of earning the amount of money that vehicle costs. Get them on the phone as quick as you can.
How do we make it any more complex than that?
Yeah. Again, but that's what I look for. And so but I can tell somebody, if you say, hey, I got an appointment that's coming up, you can go to the bot and go, can you write me a text message to confirm the appointment that I have with this customer at this time? And it'll go and spit it out for you, copy paste. Yeah, we have them in our CRM tool already, but if we make it all easy for them, they can do it. What if they can do it on their phone? It's a website. You can do it on your phone and text your customers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How do I get somebody who ghosted me to re-engage? It'll give you the psychology. At the end, you go, then write me that email. Write me this thing, right? And so I want it to be easy. Yes, I've talked to several people that are like, dude, way too cheap, right? With your mindset, right? And I'm like, I want no excuse for an owner to say, let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then they'll buy it. They'll get hit every month for their $99. My team will add users as you go through. So everybody better have the same domain, right? So
well, right on.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, man, I got to tell you, I really enjoyed this conversation. We need to do more of them.
I agree.
But
I do my show too.
Yeah, hell yeah. I don't know why I haven't gotten an invite yet.
I don't know. You probably didn't check your LinkedIn.
Oh,
yeah.
That's not true.
Please excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. Well, Joe, I appreciate you jumping on the podcast with us today. It's been an enlightening conversation. I wish you the best. I'm sure we'll be doing a lot together in the future, and keep fighting the good fight.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, Chris.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks.